Okay. Okay, we are being recorded, so I will plan accordingly. Okay, you tried to use GradeMark, had some difficulty. Okay, well, when we get there, if you let me know, actually, or you let me know now what specifically you're having problems with. Okay. And while Susan's typing, I'll just mention that I have two moderators here today, Jim Salvaggio and Brett Bixler. So if you might hear from them if you have a question until they can get to me. And yeah, Susan, I was just wondering, are you using Firefox or some other browser? Because I know Firefox can be a little quirky. Oh, Chrome. Oh, I guess I'm going to be demoing in Chrome, so we'll find out. It may be that Internet Explorer is the best bet. Are you on a PC or a Mac? Oh, PC. So yeah, probably Internet Explorer. Oh, the iPad option. I don't have a slide for that. Unfortunately, yeah. Unfortunately, the iPad option is not integrated with our single sign-on. We've passed that along to Turnitin, but I'm not sure when a fix will be included. You can use the iPad, use the browser app Safari, and log into turnitin.psu.edu, and you can use some of the features, but unfortunately GradeMark is not one of them, so I'm very disappointed, because many people would like to be able to grade on an iPad. The other thing people are doing is downloading all the files and just annotating the files at home and re-uploading them, but that kind of defeats the purpose. So, all right. Well, I think I am going to get started, and those who trickle in, trickle in. So, whoops. There. And I'm going to share my screen. Hello, Flash. Let me try this again. There's a possibility I may not be sharing my screen right now because I'm getting a Flash error. There it goes. Good, Flash. Okay. I would. There it goes. Yeah, a colleague of mine once, her motto was there was no easy button for certain technologies.
Elizabeth, if you're talking.
Hello, world. I currently have my mic disconnected.
That's pretty cool.
So,
okay, now I hear you, Elizabeth.
all right, thank you. All right, I'll just start over again. All right, so I'm calling this reintroducing Turnitin. Am I still sharing my screen? Excellent. So because some of you have used it and some of you may not. So quickly, there is a turnitin.psu.edu before July 1st. It just took you into the service. Now it goes to an updated support page with a logon link, and you can bookmark the URL if you want to. The big thing is that before July 1st, we only had licensed the Originality Report, the quote plagiarism detection section. But after that, we now license all the services, which is actually very nice. So the Originality Report, which is the red tab, and GradeMark, which is where you can put in comments, create a rubric, color highlighting, record. That's the blue tab, and now the default tab. And finally, PeerMark, the green tab, is where you can create peer critique assignments for students. And in case you're wondering, if you had an instructor account before July 1st, you still have your account, you still have your classes, you still have your reports. It's just that you now have options for GradeMark and PeerMark. And if any of your colleagues are curious, you're not required to use the new tools, but we hope you check them out. I did want to go over usage since they wanted us to make sure that we all understood. So our license allows for course assignments, any thesis or papers that are part of an academic program. There is a mechanism that we can give out demo accounts and training accounts for anyone who needs them. And some things like scanning content for PSU online courses and other related educational uses. What you're not allowed to do is scan your own papers, so we don't want students self-scanning their own papers and their own accounts. We do encourage instructors to create draft assignments where students can see an originality report, but you don't submit it to the Turnitin database. There are a lot of students who they understand that plagiarism is wrong and they don't want to commit it, but they've accidentally committed it before, and they just kind of want to make sure that they know what's going on. And finally, they don't want, like if you're a faculty member and you're going to submit a journal article, you're not licensed to let you self-scan. They have alternative services for that. And finally, there's a Turnitin admissions. So some colleges have purchased that module. So if you're a college and you want to scan admissions essay, we strongly encourage you to buy that, and it has a better interface for that purpose. Okay. Getting up a new instructor account, basically, it's still the same process. If you don't have one, you just would send a request to turnitin@psu.edu and send your course information and semester. This allows us to know you're using it for a course, and then we will send activation instructions. And all this is at the sign-in. So let's just do, hopefully the demo will work, but I think what I'm going to do now is just walk through the demo. I think that's best way you can see it. So this is turnitin.psu.edu, and as you can see, we have the Get Started instructions, including Get Started for students, some help and support documents such as how to get things in and out of Angel, dealing with grade export, TAs and master classes, and some other miscellaneous things. And I also recommend Turnitin.com. Their documentation is actually very good. So
Elizabeth, you have a question?
I get questions. Oh, sure.
Susan has a question. It says, so does that mean that we can't set it up so students can see their originality report when they submit assignments?
Yes, you can. When you can set it up so that students can see their originality reports, and that's a good option. You can also set up a draft assignment where students see the reports and the reports aren't submitted to the database. So that means when they submit their final draft, they don't get a false positive. And I'll explain that in a few minutes. All right, so I'm just going to log in now. And all right, so one question that might come up is if you were, say, a graduate assistant and you got your degree and now you're teach for us, yay, yay, you'll always be bumped down to your lowest level when you log in. Or if you set yourself as a student in a test account to see in your course just to see what's going on, you'll have student access. So I have to bump myself up to instructor. And once I do that, you can see that these are the classes I teach at Penn State University. So I'm going to go through, create a new class. Before you can let anyone in, you have to create a class, and in that class you create assignments. So this is a class, so you have two options: standard class if you have just one section, or master class if you are teaching multiple sections or you want to add one TA. So I actually go through the master class. When you create, you enter in a class name. If you create a master class, you have to add what's known as a TA join password. And if you create a standard class, you get the name and the enrollment password. So the enrollment password is for students. So one option is students can log into Turnitin and enroll themselves in a class, and that as long as they have that information, is fairly simple for them. Just going back to the master class real quickly. The TA password is for something similar. It lets TAs join your course. So if you have a course with 100 sections or something like that, instead of manually adding in all your TAs, you can just give them a password. And then each TA creates a section, and that section has a password associated for it that they send to the students. One of the questions we get sometimes is if you create a master class and you send the TA and you try and send a password, it won't work, because if you have a master class, you have to have a section, even if it's just one section. And the other part about master classes you have to know about is it's one TA per section. So I know we've had scenarios, including one in the law school, where they want more than one grader, and unfortunately there's no easy way to do that right now. Which is kind of a bummer. I've also submitted that to Turnitin.com. So that's the class. I'm just going to cancel out of that one. And I've been using this one for testing. So once you have a class, as I said, you can then add an assignment. So I'm just going to go through that dialog. So usually you want your assignment to be a paper assignment. If you want a PeerMark assignment, you have to create a paper assignment first and then create a PeerMark assignment. The logic is you're critiquing a set of papers, so you upload the papers into the assignment and then you critique it. And you should actually, one thing that has also just come up is you should try and have a little bit of lag. So first you have a deadline to upload papers, and then you have a separate deadline to critique them. If you try and do them simultaneously, we've had situations where students are supposed to critique 9 items, but they can only see 3 because not enough are uploaded yet, and then they have to come back again. So it's easier to kind of just separate them out. And then just do a paper assignment. Next step is, title, point value, start date, end date, post date is when the students see results. And then the all-important optional settings, I don't know why they hired this, but this is really important. Instructions, whether you want to allow late submissions. This is where you want to generate an originality report. So as I said, so for example, if you're just using the grading portion, you don't have to generate an originality report unless you want to. Allow students to see originality reports, yes or no. I think it's fair to let them see it myself, but there may be reasons why it's not a good idea. All right, here's the database. So you have two options. By default, papers are submitted to the institution paper repository. So what that means is Penn State has its own little portion of the database just for university assignments. So if someone from Michigan State can't scan our database, so it does protect students' privacy a little bit. But someone from another campus or a later section or something like that can scan that database. So it's just a Penn State only database. And the option is no repository, and that's what you would use if you want to generate an originality report but don't want to have it submitted. So if you have a first draft assignment, this option would let you generate a report for students to see, and then later on when they do their final assignments, you can generate a second originality report, and it will be just starting from scratch. All right, so the originality report assignments. The GradeMark assignments, what they're asking for here is whether you want a rubric or not. I've created several default rubrics. So I know the law school has a series of rubrics in their legal writing class that they can select. Or you can just do one-shots, it doesn't matter. But it's nice, for example, if you're doing multiple writing classes and you almost always ask the same questions in a rubric, it is good to have some rubrics you can use over and over again. And then there's also this E-Rater. This is a grammar checker licensed by ETS Princeton. We've been getting mixed results with this, to be honest. It can pick up some things, and it might be good for especially someone who's a non-native speaker of English, but you can't add any words to it, and you can't really tweak any of the grammar rules. So if you have a citation and it breaks a grammar rule, it's gonna point it out. So that's kind of the plus and minuses of those. All right, and again, I'm just going to cancel out of this.
Hey, Elizabeth, Susan has a question.
Sure.
She says, can the students see the rubric before they turn in the assignment?
I have to look into that one. That's a good question. I would definitely make sure that you share the rubric with the students ahead of time anyway. So they can definitely see it after the assignment is graded, but even if they can see it, I generally find it's a good idea to just kind of walk them through the rubric anyway, especially for some of the larger valued assignments. But I will check into what they can see before the due date.
Carol says she
actually I'm
choice to do that.
What was that?
Carol McQuiggan says she thinks there's a choice to do that.
Okay. I'll take a look on that, and Carol, if you happen to know where that is, let me know. The reason I'm kind of hesitant is because usually you can't see the report until you upload a paper, and that's where the rubric is. So, but there may be a workaround I don't know about. So I'm going to go into here. Okay. So one of the changes that has happened was before July 1st, when you logged in to turn it in, you got the Originality Report. Now you get the GradeMark report. I am going to go to the Originality Report first. And I created this as an example of cut and paste plagiarism where students are taking, actually as you can see most of it's from Wikipedia, but I pulled, some information from other sources and changed a few words here and there, and if I'd gotten to scan it into Wikipedia, I can see that that was not going to work out and I would have to do a little more rewriting. So one of the habits sometimes students have is they just cut and paste from sources, and that's kind of can get you into plagiarism trouble real quickly. The other thing I wanted to point out is people sometimes wonder where all the sources are. So as it turns out, this pink text that only came from newmarketservices.com. It came from a paper submitted to St. Joseph's and Kaplan, and another paper from Penn State and Liberty University and so forth. So this is apparently a very popular text. So it may be that you think you saw this text in a particular paper and that's not how it's being marked. If you click that arrow to see all the matches, you might see the source you thought you were supposed to see. And you might also get into some leads into, oh, another Penn State paper. I wonder what that means. I can tell you I got it from the internet, not from another Penn State paper. And then, of course, 52% came from Wikipedia. So another question I get is, is there a minimum score before you have to worry? And the answer is it's going to vary from course to course. So, if it's an original poetry assignment, you kind of hope that the scores are really low. But if it's a paper like a lit review, you might actually have a lot of quotes in there anyway, and the Originality Report catches all quotes, generally legitimate and not so legitimate. So, if you see an orange, you definitely want to check it out. And if you see a green, you also want to check it out and make sure it sounds like what you think it's going to be and not too professional and not too strange. So that's the Originality Report. Okay. So this is the GradeMark, and the purple is the grammar checker I was telling you about, just to show you as an example. Some of them I'm just, like I said, I don't quite understand. Like this one I agree with, it's normally the United States and not United States, so I get the feeling there was a non-native speaker involved there. But other ones I'm sort of curious why that got highlighted. As you can see, here. Turnitin comes with a wide variety of generic comments geared for writing assignments, such as awk or missing comma, spelling, run-on, punctuation. It even has things like the paragraph mark. So if you've been trying to figure out how to include a paragraph mark, this is one way to do it, in the double parallel line. Vague. So basically you drag them, awk, not just vague, but also awk. And the nice thing is, especially for the more technical ones, it gives an explanation, but you can also add an explanation. You can include your own comment. Phrasing, not working. Obviously you want something a little more definite than that, but you can save. And you can see, so here's, can you be more specific? This is a comment I inserted earlier. Citation needed. I have to say, in figuring out if Citations, I really force my students to include a citation. So even if a plagiarism question comes up often, they forgot to include a citation, so that is a little more objective that, yeah, that probably something went wrong. Improper citation, okay. And then finally, highlighting. So let me see if I can, all right, so I'm highlighting the sections. All right, so if I click on it, so this is, I got it working for me on Chrome. I highlight and then I click and then I can make it different colors, and then I can even say which tribes. Probably my favorite comment, be specific. So that's an example of a custom comment and highlighting. And I'm going to drag you up. And all right, that was not good. Let's try that again.
Elizabeth, there's a couple comments. Carol said the quote, note students will be able to view attached rubrics and their content prior to submitting. And then Susan said, I found I would try to highlight it and it wouldn't recognize that I was trying to highlight.
Okay. Yeah, again, I've had trouble with that when it was working for me today. All I can say is maybe try another browser, I'm sorry. Or just try it on a practice document and see if you can get it to work there. Sometimes things don't work quite as easily as you would want them to. And then there are some tools at the bottom, so let me see if I can get there. All right. You can make a voice comment, and that up to 3 minutes longer. It's, I think, an MP4. You can add general comments, and you get a page-by-page list of comments, which is good for long text. And this is the rubric I set up. This is sort of a fake Wikipedia rubric for an article. So, you know, how many links does the article have, how many sections, blah, blah, blah. And then, again, you would probably want a more thoughtful rubric. But and then I have it, you know, 4, 3, 2, or 0 points. You can also use qualitative rubrics, meaning you don't assign numeric points, but you just say excellent, good, adequate, needs improvement, or something like that. But in this case, you know, when I click a number, it's just going to add up all the numbers for me, and that gets recorded in the gradebook. And then if you did use the grammar rater, you do get a nice report about what kinds of errors the students are making. So if you are teaching a class which is focusing a lot on grammar, this could also be a very good tool for you. So that's GradeMark. I am going to go into the rubric generator. So I want to make sure I close the right window. So one of the things you have is you have your library. I also forgot to mention you can make custom quick marks. So again, this is, so I teach linguistics, so I have things like you don't capitalize phonetic symbols. You need to make sure you have the same number of square brackets on each side. I even also have, there are a lot of kind of negative comments, but I also think it's nice to have some positive comments. So, you know, full credit, good work, that kind of thing, if you find someone who did an exceptional job. And they're very, I think I can, this is sort of what you do. You can just add, I won't, you know, good job. And you can add a comment to that. Save. And you can drag and drop specific comments between specific sets. So if you set up comments based on which course you teach. You can drag and drop comments that apply across multiple classes into each set. Okay, the Rubric Manager is where you actually set up your rubric. So this is an example of a qualitative rubric. This is for a blog assignment, so you get full credit if you address all the parts of the question and include rationale and evidence, and you get a check plus if you go beyond that, and then you get a check minus if it needs more. It's just too brief or doesn't have all the evidence I want. If I create a new rubric, you get your criteria, and you can either do a percentage or a scale, so 1, 2, 3, 4, or this is the qualitative rubric. There is a limit. You can only have, I think, 50 criteria, and I think there's a limit on how many columns you can have. So if you getting to the question on whether students can see the rubric, it may be that you have one in Word. If not, maybe you can create it in Excel or do a screen capture or something like that. Okay, well, I'll have to take a look into that. So it might be when they, in the description of the assignment, that's maybe where they can see it. So lastly, PeerMark. So this paper, which is sort of my fake assignment, I created a fake PeerMark assignment. So it was, so as you can see, this one was due August 31st, and the PeerMark was due September 15th, again, to kind of make sure papers got uploaded, and then you got a full set to critique. And this is what the report looks like. But I think it's easier if I get into the edit mode. Okay. Edit settings. So this is the assignment due dates and points. Step 2, this is where you can determine how you want to distribute papers. So do you want to distribute automatically? Do you want students to select? I think there's another way you can manually match students, which can also be useful. You can also require self-review. And this is where you can pair students or exclude pairs. And then you can add questions you want to ask about the peer review. So what points do you want students to look at? And in fact, one person said that maybe in a remedial class, what you want them to look at is, can they find the thesis in another student's paper, or can they find the conclusion? And that kind of helps them understand what you're looking for. Or maybe you want to be, you know, did you agree with this person? Did you find their evidence convincing, why or why not? Things like that. And you can save questions into the library. And then this is where you would get a report of, you get a report of this is, for Brett, this is the reviews that Brett got in the yellow section, and the blue section is the reviews Brett submitted. So you can determine if you want to grade on the critique, or you want to use the critique to determine project grades, and that can vary depending on course. Okay. So I'm going to see if I hit all the topics I found on. All right, paper upload options. Here, let me go back. So One option is students self-enroll and upload, and we actually have instructions you can hand out to students. So they log in to Turnitin, create an account. One thing we're finding is that the account requires an email. I strongly recommend you stress to the students they should use their Penn State account. They can change it, but if you're using GradeMark, it's going to, the GradeMark export will send you whatever email they put in. So if they didn't put in their Penn State email, you're going to have to go track them down and find out what their ID is. And for a large class, I would not want to be doing that. So we have a note saying if they don't use their Penn State, it may affect how their grade is recorded. And we also have instructions on if you lost track of your password that you need to hand out to students where to find it again. And we also have instructions on how to batch load from the Angel Dropbox. It's not hard, but there's a little bit of Excel manipulation you have to do. So first you have to upload a roster, and then you can upload the Dropbox.
Hey, Elizabeth, there's a question.
Yep.
Is the student's view of the grade-marked paper the same as the instructor? I'm concerned that they won't know which comments go with which parts of the paper.
It's similar but not the same. So the default view is the comments generally, the idea is you drag and drop comments close to the part of the paper that it applies to. If that's not possible, you can quote the text, and then, so they'll see where the comments that you placed are. The rubric view is a little bit different. And I'll go into student view in a second. Okay. Paper format to be uploaded. There's a minimum length of 20 words. You can do cut and paste, a plain text. You can also upload Word or RTF or HTML as long as the HTML is properly tagged, or PDF, but as long as the PDF has text in it and is not a scan. All right. Let me just go through this. So if I go into student view, so this is where students would enroll in a class. This is where they would enter the code once they got in to Turnitin. All right. So this is a different paper. So this is the comments I submitted to myself. And this one did not have a rubric, and it didn't have a PeerMark. Let's see if I can find a better. Oh, okay. All right. Let me go back into Turnitin. So now, of course, I can't log back in. All right, well, that's chugging along. Let me go. Right. This might be a better example of what comments are seen. They can have a page-by-page view, and this is the rubric view, so it tells me that I got a 3 out of 4 for a number of links and 4 out of 4 for print citations. So this was just a Wikipedia article I copied, and no capitalization on phonetics, citation needed, so this is something I highlighted. So this is what the students would see, and this is, they see pretty much the same Originality Report that you see, and then I thought there were reviews for this paper, but apparently not. Okay. Okay, I do want to talk just some quick pedagogical tips. We are kind of encouraging peer review because it does let students see other assignments. So they see other points of view. They can learn to critique, which is good, because if they learn to see what you want, they can hopefully give you what you want. And also, if students know that their peers are going to be reading it, there is some anecdotal evidence at least that they will try and pay more attention. Because, it's one thing to look stupid in front of you, but another to look stupid in front of their classmates. And I did want to go over some best practices for the plagiarism originality report. One is definitely please inform your students if you know you're going to use Turnitin. Train your students in your standard what should be cited, how do you cite. So in my class I tell them that if they hear something on the news, they should look for the broadcast date on Google, and if they hear it from their grandmother, it's, quote, a personal communication, and they do cite their grandmother. It also lets students ask questions and lets you talk about some of the fine points that aren't always obvious to students because each discipline's a little different. And each instructor, even in the same discipline, instructors may give slightly varying instructions. Strange but true. And you again don't just want to say, oh my God, this person got an 80%, he cheated or she cheated. You want to review the reports. Is it just that there are a lot of quotes in there that are properly cited and they just need to put in more original work? Or sometimes the student is the victim, meaning their friend copied the paper and got it into the system before that person did. But you also want to look for, even if it looks good, you want to be aware of any paper without any citations or a change in style. So if something sounds really, really sophisticated, you might want to check in Google, or if all of a sudden they're making weird grammatical errors, that could be a sign that they had someone write the paper and they didn't do a good job. And then we always recommend talking to the students first before taking whatever action your college requires. For GradeMark, like I said, I think including positive comments is good. Students want personalization, so again, if you see awk, try and maybe explain why it's awkward, even though that's not always easy. Make sure your rubric is clear and concise. And for PeerMark, you want clear evaluation questions. So I'm going to officially end it, but is there anything you want me to go back over or any extra questions that have come up? We've had some good ones. Let's see, Linda's typing. All right, so I'm going to show you the instructions. I don't think I'm going to try and do a live demo, but so go to turnitin.psu.edu where the instructions are. Go to the help and support page. So So we talked about create an Angel drop. So this is the roster part. So you can download a roster from Angel. Got to make sure the columns are in the right order for Turnitin to import, and then import it. And that's where you upload it. There's like upload student list under your students tab. All right, downloading Angel. First, you have to download your Angel Dropbox and their knowledge. We link to the instructions in the Angel knowledge base. You don't have to extract the files. That's new. You just have to have the zip file. You have to have your class assignment and your roster there. All right, once you get into the roster, click More Actions, you upload the zip file, and then you have to, this is the part where it's a little, you have to pay attention. So you have to match your students. So, you know, Jean-Luc Picard is the author of this paper, so I have to match him to the Jean-Luc Picard that's in my roster. There used to be a tool from IST called Litterbox. I haven't needed to use it since they kind of improved the tool, but if you do, that's still available. So it's, the instructions look a little fearsome, but it's actually not that bad once you just kind of get in there. Okay. You put a link into turnitin.psu in a folder, and then the students upload. That's the other way you can do it. I know that sometimes, though, you kind of want to do it the Dropbox way. Any other? Well, as I said, thanks for coming, especially, well, hopefully everyone's in their nice air-conditioned office. And okay, Susan's typing a question. Oh, good. Glad it was helpful. If you have any questions, just email turnitin@psu.edu. And if it's really complicated, I do monitor that listserv, so if it's complicated, I'll do that. And all right, well, thanks, and we'll be signing off in a few minutes. Okay, I will. All right. Alrighty.
All right, Elizabeth, good job. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks. It was very helpful.